been a while since I've been on video. The first thing, I don't want, any sorry for your losses or anything like that. Mainly, I'm doing this because it's the only way that I have to have someone to talk to about these things. Normally the things that I talk about on video are things that I would talk about with my wife. This is one of those things that I wouldn't talk about on video for various reasons. One of which is every time I touch on the topic, people get all worried about me. I am fundamentally incapable of suicide. But yesterday I found my wife dead, and although, I don't have conclusive evidence, it seems like it was probably suicide. At least that's what I've been collecting from the police, what they found, and what I've been able to find online about why the particular drugs involved might have been used. It is the only real answer. It's one that I strangely kind of tried not to consider even. And I would say strangely because it's almost the obvious, Both she and I have always viewed life as pointless. That's her word for it. Pointless suffering. There's just no reason, for it. Unlike me, I don't know if she ever had any real joy in her life. God. Joy is the name of our little plastic octopus, one of our friends, and I'm trying to figure out, I kind of want all our friends to be with her in some silly sort of way. Even my newest find, Mossy, but maybe not the little pink soldiers. Those just didn't belong. And I don't know. But on the other hand, I have no use for a dead body. I mean, I don't want a funeral. I don't want a service. If her father wants one, I don't know how to get a hold of him and address the issue. I'm hoping that someone in the government can do that for me, because otherwise I will make the simpler solution from my point of view, which is to just hide from it and say, hey, take care of this in whatever way is cheapest for me. I don't care. If you want to give, if I have to have some ashes, fine, I'll throw them somewhere. It'll be some sort of ceremony that is supposed to help people, but these things, I had my saying goodbye in a couple of moments. The first one, was I walked down, I was able to get a moment alone with her. The police were outside after I went for a walk. And I walked in, and there she is, her eyes still open. So obviously dead, though. And I just went, bye. Which seems so cynical, so something wrong. But it's what it felt like. It was like simply a way to formalize it. But then when they were carting the body out, the police came up to talk to me, to say, their formalization of certain things, whatever. But for me it was absolutely important. I watched them load her into the car and take away. But that's as much as any funeral will mean to me. I'm not religious in any reasonable sense. religious. I mean, I'm not religious at all. My spiritual side it would be me. I mean, if there's anything that's to be performed, it's by me. Uh, and I'm sure that I don't, I could come up with some ritual that maybe means something to me, maybe doesn't. But this is not what I intended to talk about. It's like with the games, I give too much context, right? Um, and I have to give more because it's funny. Everything's funny, isn't it? That Jesus Christ. I need a pipe. I'm sorry. Every yeah, there's a lot of context to give, and I'm hoping to get to the point of this, but maybe the context is more important. So, I'll start with what happened where things were weird the day before yesterday. Jesus, I can't even remember everything. There was something that I forgot that was important towards mind state, towards something that came out in the morning, but I don't remember what it was. But then I took a nap. I had to leave work yesterday because I was feeling sick. I'm, racked by what I think is the after effects of COVID again. They stopped for a couple of months. I may have re-caught it, or maybe just the cold weather. It's something I'm going to have to deal with every year or whatever. At least it doesn't get too cold here. I like to say the dancing drove the COVID away, because in a way it did. Every time they opened up dancing, I started feeling better. So maybe all I need to do is get out and run or something, get some exercise. Maybe my sedentary lifestyle is part of the problem. But yeah, I woke up, after a nap because I was feeling COVID fog. I've been having real stomach pains the last couple days, and this actually ties in terms of one of my worries. But I woke up to seeing the light coming through the pine trees through my bedroom window, and it was a peculiarly yellowish green light that just and all the trees, because when I have my glasses off, my vision is so distorted that there's, I wasn't making out trees at all. I couldn't identify them as trees. They were all these screaming faces, like horror swirls from Munch, Very beautiful, though. Very beautiful. And I was still heavily under a COVID fog, as well as having just awakened and had this tremendous pain in the side of my head as well. And I sometimes soon after I awakened, she came up. That's often the way we operate. One of us hears the other, and it's a safe time, to come out or whatever, or a good time or whatever. It's a chance to get some company. We spend maybe an hour a day together. Well spent, and yeah, not like any other relationship I had. More like when I had roommates back in college or whatever, And that's just really what it's always been between us. There was always very, very, I don't know. So anyway, I was trying to tell her about that and how that related to me solving a way to tie things together in a work for a work problem that we're having. And now for all hell, I mean, I probably can't even work on that problem now. It's a thought problem, not most of my work is kind of, there's a certain mechanical isolation to it, where I don't have to think about the problem too much. I can research it. I see things and then I dig for them. This is something that had to do with organization of our team, and it was really, there was a clever idea that I had had before, but I had no way of understanding how to implement it or argue it. And I came up with the argument at that same time I'm seeing these faces. So in the same kind of, it's a weird kind of altered state, an exalted state, honestly, like dancing is, where everything was so clear. And I've had that a few times in graph theory, in some permutation work that I did, in that having to do with sequencing. Genomic sequencing problem. It was, and I've counted on having that kind of ability to solve these things, where I ended up coming up with sort of the classic solution all on my own in my head, without a lot of background in it, to tell you the truth. The problem was not one that I had background in. Anyway, so when I get those kind of answers, it's happened very few times in my life, maybe a handful of times. And sometimes they're wrong, and maybe this one is, who knows. But but in terms of a way to argue it, I think it's my most likely way, because it's a very complex solution to the problem. But anyway, I come out and try to describe to her mainly the faces, but also the link to the problem and everything. And she seems to think that I'm crazy, and I agree, I'm coming off as crazy in that. But there's something, first of all, that's not the usual reaction that I would get from her from this. I'm not sure what I would get, kind of a listening, with interjections of noises to indicate that she's listening, that I demand, because I have to have that attention when I'm talking. But, and I just fill that in with the camera. Somehow it's fine with the camera not to have that. But I just assume you're all enthralled by my words for some reason. But then there was like this strong pushback as though what I was seeing, what was happening was wrong, was just vitally wrong. And she seemed as incapable of expressing the real reasons behind that as I was incapable of putting words to images that I have. My argument was, this is me touching on what you kind of maybe are as an artist, being able to just see things and see the linkages, and if I could express it in the picture, it would make perfect sense. And that's not me, that's almost never me, but it's me scratching something and combining things, to be able to see things in a very different light from how I normally see them. And then she said something that ended up being very, very important in terms of my discerning what was going on, which is don't believe everything you see on the internet. Now, that has nothing to do with anything I'm talking about. It's complete, but she's adamant about this. And also coming across as though her fog is much worse than mine, as though she can't think straight at all. And we kind of clash on this, and eventually, part. She goes down the basement, I go to my room. No anger or anything, just sort of like this. We're not hitting what we're saying, and it seemed very odd to me. She's not like that ever. I'm the more likely one to be the irrational, seeing something that isn't there, or responding in the wrong direction, I think. I don't know. And then what? Then I, several hours later, I came down to see if we were going to have dinner together. And she was still very, very dopey. And I think we discussed that as she was cooking. And I was getting worried because this was same as what had been a little earlier. And we discussed various things like, could she take, what should she do about how she felt, about the level of fog she had. And I wrote it off as delirium coming from the COVID. Now, I haven't had a delirium from the COVID. The closest I had probably was waking up yesterday. That vision, those deliriums sometimes link very, very closely to the kind of thinking that I'm talking about that I call exalted, which is that every few years I've had illnesses, and probably because I had really bad lung problems at some point that, I don't go to doctors. And, I don't know how heavy, but I think I have something like a chronic bronchitis type situation where I'd go into fevers for a couple of weeks, on and off. And at the worst peak of those, for a day or two, I would get into these deliriums that were interesting. And she had never had anything like this, and that's what I was trying to explain to her, what was happening, and that she just needs to ride it out, to sleep where she needs to sleep, be awake when she needs to be awake. She generally follows a very set pattern. I do not. I follow, like, if I am on my own not working, like for a couple of weeks around Christmas or whenever I take time off, many long periods of my life, my sleep schedule just sort of wanders around. It's like my daily schedule is like 27 and a half hours or something like that. And it just moves throughout the day when I sleep. She's not like that. She gets up with the daylight, more or less, and not in the summer. She has heavy curtains, though, to prevent that. And goes to sleep at a sort of fixed time, whatever. And so I felt that I had to communicate that to her. And it was very hard getting anything across to her. She asked if she should take alcohol, and I said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And I suggested maybe if you want to take a cold pill or some aspirin or something. I don't think she took anything at all. She went down to bed. I went and, because I took a nap, which I've been taking more and more this last few months, this years, whatever, I don't even know. Because I took a nap, I was up until 1 in the morning, which is a point where an online game of mine has something that I have to do. And I can sleep through it and fuck it. But it's advantageous for me to do it. So since I'm, awake at that time many times anyway, it's become kind of a habit. So I'm doing that, and it's probably around 1:30 or so, and there's the slightest scratching or knock at my door or whatever, just so light, and I realize it's probably her. I don't know how many times she did it, so I answer kind of curtly, "What?" you know, and she comes in, and she's still dopey, but says she can't sleep. Now, she never comes to me with, "I can't sleep." Um, I did that a few times if I knew she was awake, but now there's like there's been an 11 p.m. I can't make noise. I shouldn't bother her type statute in place, and I respect it. It's just loneliness that brings me to that. Oh, I know what it was. Yeah. She was affectionate to me earlier in a way that we haven't been since COVID. Now and then she would need a hug or whatever, but since COVID we haven't been touching for all the fucking good it does. We haven't kissed, we haven't done anything basically. And and this was probably around lunchtime or whatever, before that 4 p.m. Thing, where she needed a hug, and that was odd. I didn't process, and I actually asked, well, what about the COVID? Because I knew she was avoiding touching me, and we use separate bowls and everything. But it doesn't matter because we eat dinner together in my room, without masks and whatever. But it would be hard to eat with a mask. And that felt weird. And then at this point, she also needed a hug, and I kind of held her. But, I told her, just, be awake when you need to be awake. And I asked her if she had slept yet, and she said no. And she was very, very strange, but I figured the delirium was still there. It's odd to be affected by it that long, but okay. And I sent her off to bed. And this is actually really a key point to this whole thing, assuming it's suicide. And then, I played my stuff, went to bed. This is when I go to bed, slept, got up in the morning, started work. It was clear she hadn't done dishes. She usually does dishes right after work, but again, she was very, very, or right after dinner. She was very, very dopey. It took her like an hour to eat a little bowl of spaghetti, which was painful to me, but whatever. And there was no sign of her in the morning. This is not normal, but again, if she was up most of the night, I didn't want to wake her up. I went down a couple of times in the morning, tapped lightly on her door once, and there was no response. And very lightly, but she would hear that if she didn't have headphones on and was awake, but it wouldn't wake her up, I don't think. There goes my I don't thinks. I won't have anybody to remind me of that anymore. At some point, I went down to pick up the empty garbage can, and I knocked on her window a little louder a couple of times because I was getting pretty fucking worried. I had already had thoughts. Even before she was acting dopey, I had thoughts that she might die. I don't know why. They're not unusual for me to consider what happens if so-and-so dies. Me, her, my parents, whatever. What impact will that have? So it's not, it's a passing sort of thing that's just like, well, given the amount of times that these thoughts go through my head, it's not that unreasonable that one would happen at about the time that someone actually does die. Of course, I'd read it as a sign or whatever, maybe, I don't know. Or picking up on something, but the thing is, from the first time I tapped in the morning, I had that fear. The fear that she had died of the COVID, that because she was in a shape that I had never seen her, but I think I got in that shape quite often in my life. But I like to think of myself as living through shit that other people don't live through. I don't know. And um, let me think. So anyway, after I knocked, I was going to tell her that I was going to take the rest of the day off. I was too sick because I was again having real stomach problems, fog again, and I took. I think I only took off. I don't think I took off the day before. I'm not sure. Things are getting fuzzy here. I took the day off work at an early point yesterday and went to bed. I had been sick the day before. I think I worked the full day. I think, but I get off pretty early, so I take a nap. You know. I think I couldn't work my way through yesterday. I had not gotten a lot of sleep and didn't feel terribly well. And I went back to sleep, or I went back to sleep before noon or whatever after canceling my meetings. And I woke up, and there was still no sign she had been upstairs. The dishes were still dirty. She might have slipped up and done something very quietly. But usually I do wake up when I hear her. And given my thoughts already, I was very, very worried. So I went down and knocked on her door more firmly. And I didn't hear anything. And I pounded on her door a couple of times. And finally I opened the door. That's a big no-no, I mean, but I told her if I ever thought she was really sick or dead and didn't answer when I made enough noise, I would go in. And I did, and she was dead. Hand up like a claw, fingers black, lips black. And I looked a little bit. I didn't try to do anything. I didn't test to see if, I had a friend who ran into an ex of mine when she died. Well, actually, it was my ex-wife ran into an ex of mine when she died. But a friend who, when they called in at 911, they made him do CPR on her, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I can see dead. I know dead. I went upstairs. I tried to check my phone. My phone was dead. Not that I can utilize it because only my wife knows my password. And it's a fucking iPhone and it's complicated. It's my work phone, but I can't remember the password. I had it on a sticky sheet or something, but I can't find it. I've tried several times. And the battery, because it's an iPhone, doesn't charge. It was at 3% last time I looked at it. It was completely dead. Now today it's charged. I mean, I fiddled with it, but I fiddled with it before and the charging didn't help. I hate those fucking things. Nobody should ever have to use an iPhone. My BlackBerry worked perfectly fine and didn't require me to put in complex passwords that I can't remember, that I have to link to an email account that I don't want to be my work account. Well, that's not allowed to be my work account, and that I don't want to be my personal account. I just made some throwaway for it, so if it ever breaks, I'm not sure I can get it back. So anyway, it's been a useless piece of junk for me for most of my time. My wife's able to use it, but not anymore because she's dead. So I couldn't call 911, which probably was a good thing because I went across the street to my neighbor and got help there. And called 911 and had somebody to talk to instead of being alone in the house with a dead body. And when the cops came, I walked them up and, started giving what information I had. And anyway, My thought up to this point was it was the COVID, and even though she hadn't been exhibiting signs that were as bad as mine previously, who the fuck knows, and that it had just induced a stroke or something. And that's what I was seeing the effects of yesterday. Uh, and that's what I was explaining. When they came, they apparently brought a medical examiner up, which isn't surprising. But she came up to talk to me after I had been talking to the police for hours, really, I think. I don't know. A whole lot of time passed while they searched, the room, investigated her, whatever. She had ordered some weird drugs from, at least some from China, others from elsewhere, I think. I don't know. But they asked about those, and I got the names for them. I'm like, no, I have no idea why she would have them. I searched online, and I mean, the one is given for Parkinson's and for bad acid reflux, and the other one is given to help women lactate, and maybe, I don't know what else. And they're just not things. The acid reflux, she had asked me things about. So I think she may have been having an issue with it, but then again, maybe she was looking for my knowledge of that because I know things about common things that she doesn't. And I'm like, well, I get it sometimes. I don't take much. I mean, but I could suggest things I knew other people took: milk and magnesia, Tums, and and at this point, when they're telling me these things, I'm wondering if she had acid reflux. As I looked more into it, I saw weight issues with it and thought maybe she was trying to control her weight that way. But it actually, the odd drug went the wrong way. It tended to increase weight. I know she was worried, had a little, was really measuring calories and everything. We're both, put on weight recently, and can't seem to control it properly. And then after the police left and everything, I did some more online searching. I also, first I found something and called the police about it. It was a non-prescription and over-the-counter, I think, drug, but it may not have been available in the U.S. But I was panicking about it because it was like, I don't know what this is. It's an acid reflux thing, which fit with the other thing, and I had not seen her buy it, which would be weird. Something that was over the counter, we would generally buy on our shopping trips together to the food store, and I would have noticed something like that, almost certainly. So I sent that, I called and told them about that, and they actually showed back up, and I showed it to them, and they made the note that, no, this wasn't sold in a store. She probably mail ordered it by the way the sticker was arranged or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that makes more sense to me, at least in my head. I didn't say that. But then I did some more research on that in conjunction with the other drugs, and yeah, it shows up as it showed up as a suicide combo, cocktail for suicide. Not the other one that she had gotten from China, but sodium nitrite, which is commonly available without prescription, was the thing she got. And now I'm starting to think, oh, this isn't some weight loss product that she got in China that went wrong, and this isn't COVID. This was deliberate. It's showing up on suicide forums, this mixture. It's showing up in research papers. And it starts to make everything make sense, like the, hey, Don't believe everything you see on the internet. Uh, Now, that was making sense for using it for weight loss, if or acid reflux or anything, if like she decided to solve the problem on her own medically, um, and got a bad drug. Uh, if she was getting bad effects and knew why and whatever. But for her not to have trusted me to the extent that she told that she was taking weight loss medication and didn't tell me she thought something was seriously wrong, that's an issue. Like that doesn't comport with my beliefs of our existence. For her to try to kill herself and not tell me, I completely believe. I didn't think she'd try to kill herself, uh, but I had no great reason for that. The only thing that I had asked her was not to leave a big mess. Um, and we made jokes about it at times, like, yeah, I can just compost the body. uh, uh, but where this kind of links in strangely is my ex-wife. I guess I have a couple of them now through different means. My ex-wife, after we parted, tried to kill herself several times. And I would have done anything in the world to stop her from it. One of the things that was very difficult and that I think caused a rift between us after we had split up, after she tried killing herself, was I tried to get her to I was trying to get her released from the hospital, and after she had made an attempt, and I tried to make her promise she wouldn't kill herself, and she wouldn't do that for me, and I understand, but I couldn't bear to lose her, even though I had lost her. With this, it was different. I could bear to lose this wife. We were never the same kind of love. There was, a loving affection there, but that full bonding of and it's because perhaps we never spent the same amount of time together, because she couldn't bear that kind of burden of being with someone else so much. Whatever. With my first ex, I had seen how much joy and happiness I could bring her. And that was never there with this wife. I don't even want to speak names, I don't know why. When before I thought it was suicide, and I'm still not completely convinced. When the medical examiner came up, I asked her if, when the drugs were explained, if it was possible, or if there was any chance that my latest wife was also feeding me this. I didn't know what it was for, but at all. But because I was having similar feelings, and still am, stomach problems, the head problems, the dopiness, maybe I got a lesser dose, whatever it was. And I don't think she would dare do that, in terms of trying to giving us both, my first reaction, giving us both some kind of weight loss type thing, even though she knew I wanted to lose weight. and I wasn't controlling it. I just don't think she would slip something in like that on me. And that was a terror that I misjudged her that much. Another one is that she might have decided, let's both die, and I'm not going to take it up with you. I know you're miserable too, and you just don't have the fucking guts to do it. Well, I do. I trust this thing. I don't think so, because I've been getting sick again over, the first sneezies and everything were COVID-ish, and the whole progress has been much like it was earlier in the year. Of course, she never believed it was COVID, so maybe she's been poisoning us both for a year. But I don't think so. I don't think that's how this cocktail is supposed to work. I think it's supposed to be a massive overdose that kills you. And I don't think, my experiences don't match with that. Even if I'm getting some of the same symptoms that maybe she had yesterday, the day before. Yesterday, her symptom was slowly rigor mortis, I guess. But why do I get all on this? Some of it is I need to share it with someone. I need to talk to someone. And I got to talk to the police a lot, but I felt like I was giving them what they needed to know. I got to talk to my neighbor, but it was all of this was previous to realizing that it was probably suicide. And battery died. The police suggested cahoots, which is a really wonderful local thing that handles certain police duties. Things that police often get called for, like homelessness, people causing disturbances in the street, whatever. They suggested that I should call them and get help from them if I needed it. And maybe if I didn't have this camera, I would have. But they're not my friends. I did call my father, which is a real rarity. Happens maybe once every 5 years or so. And there's no estrangement there. It's just neither of us really likes talking on the phone and has anything particularly to say. But yeah, I emailed him first, as per my usual. Will not make a phone call without an email appointment, without making an appointment. Certainly won't accept one. But I'm not able to talk to him much about something like this, and he's not the best person to talk to about it. That's basically what it comes down to. I know that some of you out there, at least, show more caring for me than I deserve. I have no one locally I could talk to about this without laying a burden on someone. At least you could just shut this off if you don't want it. Who's not asking for that burden? I mean, there is a burden, and you watching it, you don't have to react. You don't have to comfort me. I don't want that. I just need to speak my words. And I'm emotional about this and not about the death itself. Impacted, I mean, I don't get this emotional without a lot of drink on these rants, and that's not usual. And I can't get alcohol anymore. since I've moved here. It's too hard. So, let's see. The reason that I wanted to say this as one of my more political philosophy type rants, not just personal, although I think I needed to speak these things to y'all, is this idea, and it's shown by the dichotomy between how I see the two different situations. The thing that hurts the most right now, I mean, look, I'm gonna miss her. She was not my reason for living. She was not my light and joy. But having someone that I had enough in common with in so many ways, that I could spend that hour split up among the day in interactions, talking, eating dinner, whatever, quipping little jokes while we watch something while we eat dinner, going for the occasional walk, the shopping. My God, nobody would put up with this shit, right? Nobody. And by shit I mean I don't have a car. I haul my little wheelie basket an hour and 15 minutes to the, well, actually she hauled it an hour and 15 minutes empty to the store. I hauled it an hour and 15 minutes or more back up the hill. Since COVID, often having to stop thinking I'm having a stroke. Who the fuck does that, you know? It takes a special kind of insanity to cope with me. And I had grown to accept that we would never have the kind of love that I was used to previously in my life. That it would just be this comfort, this sort of shared existence, you know, of some level, some overlap. And things made sense. You know, it's been, I think, about a decade that we've been together. Yeah. A little more, maybe up to 12 years that we've known each other. I don't know. I had to explain to the police, I don't really understand time. It's one of those things that I have to really work to figure out when something happened, dates, anything. Maybe because I don't have those ceremonies in my life, you know? I mean, we had a wedding ceremony, but it was just before not a justice this time. It was just before a judge in kind of this mass thing. And I mean, it meant nothing. None of them ever mean anything to me. I never go to graduations, you know? I kind of feel like I should. I went to my high school graduation. And I loved not the graduation, but the parties. That's where I first danced. But but the dichotomy between the two. Well, the first thing is, yes, I am going to miss her. I'm going to miss that presence in my life. I would joke, maybe I should just get a dog with her so many times. That's not the same. A dog doesn't speak back, doesn't process information in the same way. I need another human. And it has to be an attractive to me female, because otherwise I just don't feel comfortable enough. I don't feel comfortable if there's not at least the sense of some desire on my part. I can spill the beans to, you know, to someone who doesn't give a shit about me, as long as they're attractive and I can pretend. Yeah. I don't understand it. But the thing that hurts the most is not that. That's selfish. And it was such selfish reasons that made it so that I could not accept my first ex wanting to kill herself. No. It's that she couldn't share with me what she was doing, and I couldn't comfort her through it. And we couldn't discuss because she had no right to do it legally, right? If she came to me and said, well, I'm planning on killing myself with this stuff, want to come? No, obviously I couldn't. If I could kill myself, I would have long ago. So long ago. And I assume that's never going to change. With her, it was always the fear of what if it goes wrong. For me, it's not like, oh God, I want to live. I don't know what it is. I honestly don't know what keeps me alive. But it's not a fear. It's not a fear of dying particularly, and it's not a fear of fucking it up. I think it's a fear of that there are other people who will be affected still alive. Maybe once my parents die, you know? Maybe then there will be... Maybe once all of you die because I can't stop giving you videos. I don't know. It's my narcissism, I think. But anyway, my thought that I have an impact on others. If it had been legal, I would have tried to convince her otherwise. But like me, I think she fully embraces the idea that life is worthless and that the suffering is not worth it. And the suffering was more for her, I think. My suffering is petty. I see it as petty. I laugh at the pettiness. I still feel like I want to die because my sink is rusting out and I can't get somebody to do any repairs at all because they need an incoming phone. But yeah, that was the latest thing I found is my sink is leaking, and I felt around and yeah, it's just rusted out and I got to get somebody to replace it, and I can't cope with it. So I will just decay, or let that decay along with everything else, along with my wife's will to live, along with everything. But, you know, I mean, I wish I could just get a hold of a contractor and say, look, I need to be able to contact you, give you a list of things. You don't need to do them all at once. But they all need to get done. And I need to be able to get a hold of you and clean, you know, get somebody to clean my roof every year and all this other stuff. Stuff that I had an easier time doing in Phoenix, first of all, because the building itself took care of a lot of stuff, like the exterior. But for the interior stuff, I had a very good realtor who I could call, and she would find me a handyman, and I could just do it through the phone. I tried doing it with my realtor here, no response to my email looking for help, and she's still around as far as I can tell. I keep getting stuff from her from LinkedIn. But I never had the same rapport and the same feeling of trust with her. She just was a functionary, but she made this big point of, well, you know, our relationship doesn't end here. I'm here to help you. probably just if I want to sell my fucking house, you know, and it was bullshit. It was bullshit, you know, comparatively. But anyway, so she had to go through a panic alone where I could have known that she was dying had it been legal, and could have offered her some comfort and said my goodbyes to her while she was alive. And maybe could have convinced her out of it. But because this world is such that if you're going to try to commit suicide, you have to do it outside the law. There's no process. There's no means of trying to do it safely and securely. And honestly, I had no right, you know, to put demands on my first ex in that way either. None beyond asking. Once a person, you know, this isn't a momentary grief thing. Okay, for my first ex, maybe it was. I was the joy of her fucking life. And that joy ended. And, you know, that was a situational thing where she was losing her sanity, and she could not, speaking of sanity, that was another thing my wife told me yesterday, the day before yesterday. It's a blur now. Was something about wanting to find sanity. When she was clearly under the effects of this. So if she was trying to kill herself, she had already taken a lethal dose and maybe was afraid that she had driven herself insane instead of killing herself. That was one of her big fears. Which it makes it hard to believe that she could cope with me because I am so clearly not sane. But yeah, there should be a place for someone to make that choice to end their life under certain circumstances, not just, you know, I have a terminal illness and I want to be dead. That is so fucking clear. Luckily I'm in a state where that's allowed. But rather, look, I have rationally thought this out. All my life I have not wanted to live. I have discussed it with my loved ones and come to my peace about it. And that I'm not going to hurt them too much, or that I don't care if I hurt them too much. Of course, if the state tried to do it, they would probably do it with lethal injection, for all that's worth. Lethal injection. You know, I mean, fucking Dr. Kevorkian has these cocktails that people don't suffer when they're put under. What my wife went through, it wasn't great. It wasn't great, but it wasn't pain. It wasn't seriously bad. Maybe the anti-acid reflux stuff. Maybe she was having some stomach issues, whatever. I sure the hell am. Which again, maybe, but I can't believe that of her. I can't believe that she would make the decision for me. So be it if she did. But yeah, I can believe she would kill herself and leave me that sight. She didn't leave a note, I don't think. The cops didn't mention one. There was nothing obvious. She was probably, if she had had one prepared, she may have destroyed it because she was afraid she was going to live. But a person shouldn't be forced, when seeking the obvious logical solution to a life that's meaningless, And that has always been meaningless. You know, for so fucking long. It's one thing to allow a teen to do it, but by her age, by my age, we know. You know? We're on the downslope here. There's no it gets better. It didn't get better. That same, there's no fucking point to this. That's not going to go away. Whatever has kept me alive, I had one choice, one chance to die. I mean, non-accidentally. Passing out on the train tracks was probably a good chance. I had one chance to die on Mount Rainier, where I had an asthma attack, and I was so at peace with my situation that I could have chosen to not fight to live. And something like the beauty of what I saw 2 days ago, waking up, something about the beauty of where I was said no. These little moments are worth it. They're not, but I don't know. They're not worth the effort. Anyway, even with my first ex-wife, it shouldn't be my decision what she does with her life. But I do think there was a significant difference between someone who all their life has wanted to die and someone who has had a great deal of happiness they couldn't believe was available. I don't know if I had that with her. I really don't. I mean, she made me very happy, but I don't know if she gave me reason to live. I still constantly felt I could just die. And then making a decision within a year or two of that, yeah, I can't face this. I see a fundamental difference there. I'm not sure it's worth, though, forcing, a person can try to kill themselves no matter what. They can throw themselves in front of a fucking bus. Unless you put them in a padded cell, you can't prevent someone from trying, and they try stupid shit. They order shit from China and try it. They take a bunch of sleeping pills. That's what my first ex tried, among other things. She tried to throw herself off a bridge too. She was supposed to go over Niagara Falls. That would have made sense. But yeah. My wife had to die basically alone, making the decision on her own. And then when it didn't work, had to face the fears, her greatest fears, that she was destroying her mind. And I couldn't be aware enough of it to hold her and offer her comfort that she needed. Because all I could see was, okay, something's very wrong here, but I've lived through these things. I've lived through the deliriums. And yeah, I mean, it's my blame of myself, too. Where I was curt with her last night. If I knew she was dying, I would have held her all night long and let her die in my arms. I've become so fucking callous in so many things that just the ordinary suffering no longer triggers that kind of compassion in me. I was cold like this before I met her. I was cold like this, or becoming this way, before my first ex-wife couldn't take it anymore. It's that coldness that probably caused her to no longer find any great happiness in me. I'm not what I once was. I can hold a job down. Obviously, I'm not what I fucking once was. But there's still enough in me that I could give someone comfort while they die. Someone I love. And that is what these laws have taken away. They made... They made me see the fucking real world solutions. I have to get up in the morning and do my goddamn work. I have to follow my little rituals in the pathetic form that I can to match what society needs of me, which is to be a cog in some fucking bank's needs. Because that is my place and I must do my duty. I always had to do my duty when I could see it. If I ever could have seen that my duty was to fix the world, I would have become a tyrant to do that. I couldn't see it clearly, but I could see clearly that my duty is to do my job, or my duty is to haul this lumber around and to fix this and to build a nest for my first wife. And paint it beautifully, and my duty definitely would have been, the compassion. That I still could have seen clearly. But, yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, I mean, I can't afford to become what I once was. And I think that means I can't afford to ever be with anyone again. I knew that. I picked the coldest person in terms of like, not cold, no, not that. The person who required the least from me this time. And still, I'm too cold for that. I couldn't give joy, but she didn't allow me to either. But I could have at least given comfort at the end. And I don't know what the solution is, but this government should not be forcing people to seek their death illicitly. There should be a good off-ramp. Up we go.